We've made it through October and I've watched 31 horror movies during the month, so let's rank them. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the Movie Ranker, and today I'm going to stop and rank all 31 movies that I've watched in the month of October. I thought it'd be a different type of video for you guys, switch it up a bit. I didn't watch a lot of the classic horror movies I usually watch this October, some of it had to do with me ranking franchises, so of course I watched those. Others I just did random standalones, but you're not going to see like the original Halloween on this list. I actually watched this just like a month before October, so it was still pretty fresh in my mind. But yeah, those are the usual Halloween watches, right? The October watches. But this time I mixed it up a bit. Hope you guys enjoy. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the movies I already covered, like in franchises that I already covered, but I will still go over them. But there's a few standalones in here as well. So without wasting any more time, let's dive in. So for me, coming in the last place at number 31, I have to give it to the Psycho remake. This is one of the most pointless remakes ever made. It's shot for shot the exact same as the 1960 classic. It's just got weaker performances, and yeah, it lacks all mystery because you already know what's going to happen. The only way I can see someone enjoying this more than original is if you would have seen this one first, or maybe have some nostalgia for this one when it came out. But if you know the original, why would you go to this one? Just like I said, weaker performances. The shock value is just not there anymore. Vince Vaughn is no Norman Bates. I mean, it's hard to follow Anthony Perkins to begin with, but I just did not like Vince Vaughn's portrayal with his little giggling and stuff. Just not a fan of this film, and I'll never revisit it if I don't have to. Up next, at number 30, I got VHS Viral. I think this is the only anthology on this list, and wow, what a terrible, terrible assortment of short films. Just terrible. Even the wraparound story, nothing works at all here. It feels very amateur. It feels very cheap. The stories aren't scary. They're it's just ridiculous how a downgrade we got from the first two VHSs. This one, it doesn't even feel like it's in the same league. There is one good short story in here. I think it's called Parallel Monster. I think that one was great, but it still suffered from lack of good effects. And yeah, just its overall tone is just pretty off. It gets very bizarre in that one, but it is the best segment in here and the only one worth watching. The rest are all garbage. One of the worst anthologies I've ever seen. Up next, at number 29, I got Carrie, the TV movie from 2002. Yeah, made for TV, so there's little to no gore to be found. Very cheap effects since this was a made for TV, and it's just really drawn out. It's really long compared to the other versions of Carrie. Apparently, this has the closest source material to the book adaptation. It's the best translated, but that doesn't make it a good movie just because it's a good adaptation, right? Yeah, just wasn't a fan of the girl who played Carrie, and everybody in this movie looks way too old to be in high school, but yet the teacher looks the same age as them. She should have looked older as well because she gets mistaken as a student when I'm watching this. But yeah, pretty terrible movie that doesn't add a whole lot besides from these investigations that happen in the future. They keep jumping to the future and then flashing back to the events of the actual Carrie. Just not a fan of this one. Again, feels kind of pointless. It's not exactly shot for shot remake, but all the main points are there. Weaker performances all around, and just wasn't a fan of this. Up next, at number 28, I got Children of the Damned, sequel to Village of the Damned, a 60s film. And yeah, this one was pretty uneventful. It was kind of boring, tell you the truth. It wasn't a terrible story. It's about these group of kids all hide out in this, I think it was an abandoned church, and they're kind of held off there while society doesn't really know what to do with them because they're super smart. I just don't like that they remove most of the horror elements from, like, in this sequel. From the first film, it was basically a straight up horror sci-fi, and this one it leans way more into the sci-fi, and just it asks a lot of interesting questions though, like, do we kill off these kids even though they haven't really done anything wrong, but they're capable of doing something wrong, and the military applications that can be put on these kids if certain countries got a hold of them. Those questions are interesting, but the movie itself is just so boring and uneventful. Not a lot happens. Pretty much the whole runtime is them in this building just holding off while people starts gathering around, and they kind of send in the army, and they're trying to discover what to do with these kids. It does have an incredibly bleak ending, which I think put up my rating a tiny bit on this one, but overall I'm still very mixed on this entry. Up next at number 27, I got Seed of Chucky. Now, knowing most people, especially Child's Play lovers, they would have this at the bottom of this list with all these other films. They hate Seed of Chucky. I don't like it. I think it's a bad movie, but I think there's way worse, especially the movies that I already mentioned. This one has some entertainment value to it, at least, even though most of the jokes are way too goofy and don't land or are outdated, like the whole Britney Spears kill, stuff like that. But you do get some pretty cool kills. The guy getting his head melted there with the acid. Red Man getting disemboweled. I like how meta and self-aware it is, with Jennifer Tilly voicing Tiffany, but also Jennifer Tilly playing herself as an actress, like in this movie. Very interesting, kind of Scream-like a little bit with his meta humor. But yeah, Chucky and Tiffany are great. The problem here is their kid, Glenda, whatever you want to call it. He is just not a great character. And it's not because he's non-binary or whatever. It's just that that's what they just keep poking the fun at. It's all about that as the main joke, and him just not knowing whether he's a boy or a girl, and him like being very scared of the situation he's in. He's not a killer. He's trying to be a good guy and everything. It just doesn't work. It's Chucky we're talking about. His kid would be this crazy psychopathic killer. I think that would have been the best direction to take it. But yeah, I can see where everybody's disappointed with this entry, but like I said, I don't mind it. I'm more mixed on it than thinking it's a dumpster fire. It is the worst in the Child's Play franchise, but it's still okay. Like I said, it's a mixed bag for me. Up next at number 26, I got Carrie, the other 2013 remake. Talk about mixed bags. This one's a mixed bag for me as well. Again, it doesn't really go in any directions that are interesting. It kind of repeats the original Carrie movie. The performances aren't as bad as the TV movie. I think it's Chloe Moretz, I think her name is, the main girl. I like her performance and everything. It's just that her beauty kind of shines through. So she's not as believable as Sissy Spacek in the original. And I do like her mom being Julianne Moore. I think she brings a little bit more to the role, a little bit something different. She has self-harm and stuff about her, and her daughters try to stop her, using her powers to stop her from hitting herself and stuff. Interesting. I just like their bond in this one. Obviously, it's still an abusive relationship between the mom and the daughter, but it's handled a bit different than in the original, and I can appreciate that. But yeah, it goes bigger in its final act too in this Carrie movie, but the effects just kind of ruin it for me. Way too much CGI used. Go practical if you can. Like the way the roads are splitting and that, it just doesn't look right. I don't like how Carrie's using her hands to move stuff like she needs to use her hands. It's telepathic. It's all in her head. And I don't like her flying and using her hands. It's not a fan of that. But yeah, not a terrible movie. Just again, kind of a mixed bag for me. Up next, at number 25, I got the movie Popcorn. Now, this was a first time watch for me. And it's interesting. This is one that I feel like deserves a remake because it has a really juicy concept of having this horror-thon at night in a movie theater with all these horror fans. And they're playing like all these late 50s or so movies. And it's in a time where even in real life back then, if you were watching a movie, they would try to give you the experience in the seats as well. Like if there was an earthquake in the movie, your chair would vibrate, say. And this horror-thon is the same type of deal, except when they're trying to, like, for instance, they're watching a movie about a killer mosquito, and they had this big prop of a mosquito coming over the crowd, but it always ends up turning out bad. Like, this mosquito goes back behind stage and stabbing the guy running the show. And every time, people slowly get picked off during the movies, backstage and such. And really interesting concept. We got a really cool killer, kind of slasher killer here, with a cool look, really messed up face and everything. And there's a twist on his motives, which I don't think exactly works, but it is interesting enough. The only problem I have with this movie is the story. Like I said, it's a little convoluted. There's like 7 side plots going on. I think they should have focused more on this horror-thon. But our main girl, has a troubled past, and there's something off with her mom, and there's some supernatural elements happening that are never quite explained, like the sign off the movie theater moving and the letters and stuff. But yeah, this could definitely use a reimagining or a reboot, but it's still okay enough as it is, as this early 90s schlock. Coming up at number 24, I got Cult of Chucky. This one has such a juicy premise. I love horror films that take place in asylums, and you mix in these mentally incapacitated patients, these mentally ill people, with horror elements, and it makes these characters not as believable as your regular Joe. So people just think that they're just crazy when crazy stuff starts happening, and all that's super interesting. You throw Chucky in there, and multiple Chuckies. I really enjoy the first half of this film. It's full of tension and mystery. Nika's being tormented by Chucky, but no one will believe her, of course. And how we start bringing in other dolls, and we're not sure if they're possessed by Chucky's soul or not. That's real interesting. I feel like it falls apart in the final act, though, when we get like a bunch of Chuckies acting like the Three Stooges, and they just go a little too goofy, kind of go into that seed of Chucky humor, which I don't really care for. It doesn't land most of the time, and it leaves too many open ends with Nika getting out of the wheelchair after being possessed by Chucky, and Chucky's in a girl's body at this point, and Andy being locked in the asylum. His character really goes nowhere in this film. He feels like he's just there for nostalgia bait, because yeah, he shows up. He's at the start and he shows up at the end just to fight off one doll for 2 seconds and get locked in a cellar, not a cellar, in a cell, an asylum cellar, whatever you want to call it, a holding area. And yeah, the movie just ends where it's like, well, I want to see what happened to Andy. I want to see where this Nika character is going. I want to see all these things, but I'll never get to see it because we just never got a follow up movie to this. I hear the TV series continues on the storyline a bit more and fills you in on things that happen, but I just never got a chance to watch it. But I think it's so unfortunate to not have a follow up movie. It's nice to have the TV series, but I'm a movie guy. Coming up at number 23, I got Psycho 4: The Beginning. This was a made for TV Psycho movie, but it still had Anthony Perkins in it. It still followed the main storyline. And I enjoy this one enough, but it is a prequel. And the problem with prequels, they don't really. I mean, they're not really that satisfying because you already know how things are going to play out at the end. But it was pretty cool to see Norman's backstory here when he was a kid and how his mom treated him. Played by Olivia Hussey, who does a fantastic job. She really elevates this film for me. Because like I said, we already kind of know, not know how he was treated as a kid. We know his mom was abusive and all that stuff. But showing us doesn't really help. I preferred to be ambiguous. But at least Olivia Hussey's performance was so good that it's still entertaining enough for me. Like I can still go back and watch this one every once in a while. And I like that they changed the template of the story too for this one. Like you got Norman calling the radio show and giving his story to them. That was kind of unique, even though I wanted the radio show host to be more involved in the final act. They kind of get put on the back burner near the end. But yeah, I like the present day stuff better than the prequel stuff in here. Norman discussing how he's about to have a child and he doesn't trust what the kid's going to grow up to be, and he feels like he probably should kill his wife before she gives birth just to end the bloodline right there. All that's very interesting. I like how it plays out. The prequel stuff, I'm kind of mixed on, but the present stuff I really enjoy. So Psycho 4 is okay in my book. Coming in at number 22, I got Friday the 13th, the remake. Or reboot, whatever you want to call this, is basically like the first 4 movies tied together into one film with a few things added in here and there. We get a very brutal Jason when Derek Mears. Yeah, a lot of people really love this movie. They put it first place in their ranking. Not me, but I still do enjoy it. I still think it's an okay remake. I'm just such a big fan of the old movies that it's hard for me to put this one any higher. But yeah, we get some pretty decent kills. The brutality's there. We get an intense Jason. He's more like a hunter type character in here. I like how he has like underground tunnels in that. It explains how he's traveling from one end to the other. Makes them a little less supernatural, a little more human, which is always more enjoyable, I guess, with these slasher characters. I hate the characters though. The main characters, they're all pretty much douchebags or unlikable, aside from our main guy looking for his sister and the girl helping him out. Those two are interesting. Everybody else, I hate. I just, I know Friday the 13th isn't the best franchise for characters, but these ones here are just such douchebags, and I just can't stand them, to be honest with you. And I always found that the movie was so good in its opening act, its first 20 minutes, and it never really quite reaches that height again in the movie. It's just so intense and well written and really brutal. And then it kind of burns down and never reaches that level, which is very unfortunate. And also the third act I find is pretty lame within the barn, the way they defeat Jason. Not my favorite. But overall, an enjoyable movie. We get some beautiful women, some cool kills, and a menacing Jason, so I'm not complaining. Coming in at number 21, we got Village of the Damned, the remake, the Carpenter remake from the 90s. I have a lot of nostalgia for this one. Maybe that's why it's up higher than most people on this list. Definitely pales in comparison to the original 1960 flick, but I just watched that for the first time this month, so I couldn't compare it to that in the past. I really like the cast in here. We got Christopher Reeves, we got Mark Hamill, a lot of cool actors in here. The performances are okay, nothing real bad or real, brilliant either. Uh, it's not exactly a shot for shot remake of the original, but it follows a lot of the same beats. But I do like when it goes and does its own thing, like having one of the kids be a stillborn, and it kind of screws up the connection with the one of our main kids because they're all kind of paired up, and it kind of screws him up and gives him a little bit of a conscience since he's not connected to this partner of his. I thought that was real interesting. Um, but overall, I think it suffers from cheap special effects. Like the glowing eyes look terrible. I feel like all that worked better in the original because it was in black and white. It hid some of those effects. But yeah, I can still have a fun time with this. The kills are a little bit more gory. Nothing too crazy, but they do up the stakes. Like the girl putting her hand in the pot of water. Her arm looks pretty gross at the end of that. And I enjoy watching this. Like I said, I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It's not a great movie by any means, but I'm entertained by it. Cracking our top 20, I got Friday the 13th, Part 7, A New Blood. Basically, Carrie versus Jason. It was really cool to see Jason up against someone who can fight back. Not just your regular final girl, but she can really mess him up. From electrocuting him to catching him on fire, dropping houses on him. It's great watching that third act play out. It's very action packed, very exciting. Great stunt work by Kane Hodder. One of my favorite versions of Kane Hodder playing Jason here. His look is incredible, very detailed with all the cuts from all the movies he had, and, his spine showing and everything. Great, great makeup effects. Unfortunately, we get some very forgettable characters, the most forgettable in the entire franchise. I've seen this movie so many times and I can't tell you most of their names. I know Tina, the main girl, and Dr. Cruz in that, which is one of the biggest a-holes in this entire franchise. But the rest of the characters, the kids, they're all so forgettable. And of course, the MPAA really butchered the kills here. They're all cut away. Apparently, we had some really cool effects that we'll probably never get to see, unfortunately. But the movie itself, still pretty good for a Friday the 13th film. I just don't like the ending. I don't like the final way they defeat Jason with Tina conjuring up her dad to come out of the water and grab Jason and haul him down. That could have been cool if her dad was all deformed and composed from being in the water for so long, like a corpse. That would have been cool, but he's not. He just looks the same as when he went down, except with like a little bit of dirt on his face. I'm like, come on. Very lame, very cheap, but an okay Friday the 13th movie overall. At number 19, I got The Rage, Carrie 2. Now, this was a real big surprise because I heard nothing real great about this movie my entire life. That's why I never really seeked it out. But yeah, I enjoyed that it went a different direction than the original Carrie, especially after the two remakes. This thing does its own thing, and it actually feels like it's not even a Carrie movie. It feels like it was written, and then they kind of put Carrie elements in it later, which, from the research I did, that is what happened. But it doesn't make it any less enjoyable. I still have a fun time with this. It deals with like rape culture and the way some men are and how they talk in the locker rooms about women and that, and how they play these games on who can sleep with the most girls and stuff. It deals with that scenario and situation very well, which leads to a girl committing suicide in the film, which was Carrie, not Carrie, I think it's Rachel in this one, which was her best friend and sets things in motion, right? And yeah, the ending is real awesome when Rachel ends up at the house party and she just snaps when she finds out that she was being used as well and exploited, even though the guy she was seeing actually did love her, but she sees it as if he was playing a game as well because all of his friends convinced her of this, and she just goes psycho, starting to kill people, shooting CDs and into people and getting like harpoons, and it's just an awesome house party massacre where she's just going all out. I don't like how she gets like these roots because she had like this tattoo on her and it like grows roots like all over her, symbolizes I think her connection with her best friend or friendship with her. I don't really like the look of that. I find it looks silly, but the massacre itself looks great with some pretty cool effects. I think Rachel's a great character too. She's not like Carrie. I'm glad they didn't go in that route. She has her own personality, a little bit of spunk to her. Not really gothic, but has that kind of vibe to her. But she's not socially incompetent. She can still talk to people and that. And I just like that they didn't just copy and paste a lot of stuff from the original Carrie. And this one's way more enjoyable than it has the right to be. At number 18, I got the sci-fi movie No One Will Save You. I think this was a Hulu original. I watched it on Disney Plus myself here in Canada. Pretty good alien invasion type flick. It reminded me of Signs at times. It's really more isolated though. It deals with this one girl who lives in this house, and you get real great moments of tension with like aliens running around her house and that while she's hiding, and she ends up killing one, and this body lays in her house for a while. Real creepy. And it's just how she has to deal with this situation on her own. She can't go to the cops because we find out that she has a troubled past with them on an incident that happened with her when she was younger. And I like how the movie really slowly gives you information on that incident. Like we don't know about it right away at the start, but we know something happened. But they kind of spoon feed you throughout the film. I think it's really well done. And yeah, it's a pretty great alien invasion type flick. I just feel like the final act went in a direction I just wasn't expecting. It took me a while to come around to it. I was kind of mixed on it, but it is kind of enjoyable. I find it kind of plays out like a Twilight Zone episode the way it ends. But yeah, a pretty enjoyable film. A little bit forgettable, maybe. Maybe not as iconic as other alien movies, but I had a pretty good time with it. At number 17, I got Satanic Panic. Now, this is a fun horror comedy in the same vein as like Ready or Not, or movies like that with like a fun atmosphere, like The Babysitter, about this pizza delivery girl. Her first night on the job, goes to a rich neighborhood and ends up stumbling upon like a cult sacrifice thing for like a Satanist crew of these rich people, and they end up choosing her to be sacrificed once she stumbles in asking for a tip. And it's just really fun watching her and this other girl in the neighborhood try to escape from these crazy millionaires, and they think they're entitled to do this because they're rich and powerful, and this is the reason why they're rich and powerful, from performing these rituals. And yeah, it gets disgusting at times. There's some pretty good gore in here. It's really funny, laugh out loud moments with the cult and how they argue with each other sometimes. They're not sure who should be leader. The only thing that kept this one from being great to me, again, is the final act. It went in a direction I did not enjoy at all. It was unsatisfying the way things wrapped up, which is really unfortunate because the rest of this movie is friggin' killer. It's so fun and entertaining and kind of over the top. I just wish they could have stuck that landing. Up next, at number 16, I got Young Frankenstein. Now, while not really a horror movie, this is more of a straight up comedy. It it's about Frankenstein. It's like a parody of Frankenstein, so I feel like it suits this list. It was a first time watch for me. Mel Brooks movie, which I love his movies, Spaceballs and Men in Tights, Robin Hood flick. Those two I've been watching my whole life, so I get when I watch this, I get the appeal. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like 70s version of those films, one of his earlier films. So the jokes in that are a little bit more ahead of its time, I feel. Not everything landed, but a lot of it did. And I could see me really enjoying this a lot more on rewatch. Like, I was warming up to it as the movie went along. When it started, I was kind of iffy on it, but I was falling in love with it by the end. Igor or Igor in this, the henchman, he is so hilarious. Definitely my favorite character. So funny, and every scene that he's on screen, he makes me laugh with his eyes going in different directions and that. Um, we get Gene Wilder as our main Frankenstein doctor, and he does a great job. I enjoy watching him in all films that I've seen him in, and this one he really gets lost in the role. Like I kind of forget that it's him playing this character. We also get Gene Hackman in a small role playing an old blind guy, which was really fun to see too. And our Frankenstein here is not like menacing, trying to kill people. It's just people are scared of him, but really he's just a nice guy, you know, misunderstood. And I like the whole situation how he ends up with the doctor's wife at the end, and the doctor ends up with his assistant. It's really funny, and how the his ex ends up becoming like Bride of Frankenstein, has the hair and everything. Pretty fun movie. Definitely one I'll be returning to, and I can see me enjoying more and more on every watch. Coming in at number 15, I got Child's Play 3. Now, this is a Child's Play movie that I've grown to like over the years a lot more. I was more mixed on it back in the day. But I come around to the characters. I really enjoy them. Seeing Tyler, Andy being a teen, and all of his friends he comes to have at the military camp, like Da Silva. And yeah, they're really fun to watch. Seeing Chucky run around this military camp is real cool too, and how he's killing off like the barber and different people like that. Gives the head military captain like a heart attack. He's like, "You gotta be kidding me!" And yeah, it's just his one-liners and that are at an all-time high here. It's great. Like, "Pesto, you're dead." Or "Nothing like a good strangulation to get the circulation going." Stuff like that. It's really the Chucky we know and love here. He really came into his own. It had some silly scenes like the paintball scene using real rifles. Like I said, it's entertaining, and we get a pretty badass final act when they go to that amusement park thing, and in that like haunted world ride. And Chucky's in there with them, and he ends up getting his face sliced off, and eventually going into this giant fan, chopping him up into a billion pieces. Pretty fun stuff, and it's just cool to see Chucky go after Tyler instead of Andy this time around, but Andy's still being involved. A movie that grows on me more and more with every watch, and it may still keep getting better over time. At number 14, I got Never Hike Alone 2. Now, this is a fan film. A fan film has no right to be this high in this list with all these blockbusters and, movies that actually went to cinema, most of them. But damn, is this a good fan film. The best I've ever seen. It really gave us what the fans wanted of Friday the 13th. I really enjoyed Never Hike Alone, the first one, and Never Hike in the Snow. But I think he really captured everything I love about the franchise in this one. We get Tommy Jarvis back, and they really deal with the trauma and that he went through over the years, and because he was in part 4, 5, and 6, and this is kind of a great follow-up to Jason Lives, to part 6. And it's just cool watching him go after Jason again, trying to put him to rest once and for all. We get a great group of characters with him. We get Vinny, who plays the deputy. I think he's sheriff in this one, who was in Jason Lives as well. And he gets an awesome death. Like, the way Jason takes him out is incredible. Great practical effects. And yeah, this movie is just so badass. Jason doing a whole hospital massacre in here, and you get like GoPro footage and that of the officers and that he's taken out, is just really cool to watch. Very entertaining. And the way they defeat him too makes so much sense, putting him back into the lake. It's just a movie that should be seen by all Friday the 13th fans, especially fans of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. It does a great job at paying tribute to those fans and those movies. And I think Vincent DeSante did an amazing job directing this, and he deserves a theatrical Friday the 13th movie. Just give him one, guys. At number 13, I got Psycho 3. Another movie that has been growing on me on every rewatch. It's a little bit more straightforward than the first two Psycho movies. Norman Bates is the villain, and we know it. It's pretty clear. There's no real mystery behind it. But it's interesting to see what he's going to do with certain characters and how he reacts to them. Like, we get the Duke, who ends up running the motel, and he's such a weird creep. And just how he's like always talking about don't touch my guitar and stuff like that. He makes for a memorable character, especially the scene where he's in the room and the lighting's all red and Norman comes in to find him and they have that great confrontation and you find out that the Duke took his mom's corpse and is in the room with him. All great stuff. And that other character too that left the nunhood, who reminds Norman of Marion Crane. She has the same initials and everything, and you're like, oh no, is Norman going to snap for her again? And it just makes for an interesting watch. The mystery is not real there for the Norman character anyway, but it's still there with the side characters. Get some great kills in here, and it's definitely a fun slasher. Up next at number 12, I got Bride of Chucky. One of my childhood favorites. This was rented so many times at my place when I was a kid. Just kept renting it and renting it and renting it. Me and my friends, when we were like preteens, loved this movie. It had that perfect humor for me. It had cool kills, and Chucky is a badass in here. I love his new look, the stitched up look, his most iconic look to date, and my favorite personal look of his. Tiffany, great addition to the franchise. The best version of her is in this film. And I love how when she becomes a doll, she's watching Bride of Frankenstein. And there's a lot of elements that are similar to that in this film. Yeah, the humor doesn't overstay its welcome. It's there, but I feel like it's balanced with the horror elements, unlike Seed of Chucky. And most of the jokes land for me this time around. We get that great kill with John Redder, with all the nails in the head, making him look like Pinhead from Hellraiser. The only thing that keeps this one down for me a little bit is the main leads, Katherine Hagel and her boyfriend in here. Those two actors, they're so unlikable. They're accusing each other almost immediately of being the murderers when they're supposed to be boyfriend and girlfriend and love each other. It's like they get married and right away they're accusing each other. I don't like that at all. It's not good character development. It's just not well written. But everybody else is fine. And I do enjoy this film. It just dropped in my enjoyment levels over the years. It's still good, but it's not amazing like I used to think when I was a kid. Up next at number 11, I got Curse of Chucky. Now, this one really put the franchise back on track, made it horror again, full of tension again. One of the best scenes of tension is actually the dinner scene, which I didn't mention in my ranking, which I hated when I was editing. I was like, I forgot to mention the dinner scene, when they're all having chili and Chucky poisons one of the food, but you don't know who it is, who has that plate, and people switch spots, and they're making random facial expressions when they're eating. They're like, "That's great," and like you think they're gonna be like, "This tastes like poison," but you're never quite sure who has it, and it's just one of the best tension filled moments in the entire franchise. And of course, we find out the priest ends up having it, and which leads to an incredible death as well when he's on the road and he ends up getting decapitated. Very good. And like I said, this movie went back to the horror elements. We got this big, huge, almost like mansion house. Our main lead's in a wheelchair, so she doesn't exactly have the best odds against Chucky, which is great for a final girl, have to really fight back like that. It's interesting. We got great family drama in here. We got an affair going on in this film, so it's interesting watching all the characters, even when it's not dealing with the horror elements. Chucky looks stupid as hell until you get that great reveal where it was just like putty or whatever over his face, and we get that great old school look with the, all the stitches and that in it. Still doesn't look as good as Bride of Chucky, but at least it looks a lot better than what the starting of this film showed. And yeah, I loved all the backstory with Nika and Chucky, how he was involved with her family in the past. It's just a great follow up to Seed, since Seed did such a shitty job. It removed this franchise from the theaters. It's unfortunate this one was straight to streaming or straight to DVD or whatever, but it does do a great job of putting the franchise back on track with some gory kills and a menacing Chucky. Reaching our top 10, our heavy hitters, I got the original Village of the Damned. A classic movie. This was a first time watch for me though. I really enjoyed it. I only ever seen the Carpenter remake before this, and I think this one is a much better film. It's short, only an hour and 10 minutes, so it just flies by. And I just love the whole mystery setting up this movie, where this town just all passes out, and there's like this boundary around this town, and if you walk into it, you will collapse and pass out. But eventually they all wake up, and the army's trying to figure out what's going on, what happened here. Was it like a demon? Was it an alien? They're going through all the theories. All that's super interesting. And It happens that a bunch of these women end up pregnant in this town and giving birth on the same day to the same type of white-haired children, and they're really alien kids. We come to find out, or I like to believe so anyway. And these kids, if people mess with them or think the wrong thing about them, because they can read your minds, they will mess you up. They make people drive into walls when they're driving their car, or like stick their hand in boiling water. It makes it seem like the people are doing this on purpose, like they're committing suicide or self-harming themselves because the kids are using their telepathic powers, which just adds another element to the film. And you how do you stop these kids? If you try to take them out, they will read your minds and kill you before you get to them. So makes for great villains. I think the black and white really helps with the special effects in that. Helps with the kids' wigs and their glowing eyes. It's less noticeable, and it has a great final act where the professor realizes the only way to defeat them is to blow them up and take himself out with them so they don't suspect nothing, and to block his mind with a brick wall. So he goes into class with them, and just all he thinks about is a brick wall, so they can't see him thinking about the bomb in his briefcase or in his bag. Really brilliant, kind of sad but satisfying ending, and just a great original sci-fi horror film. Up next at number 9, I got The Strangers Pray at Night. Part 2 doesn't have a whole lot of connection to the first film aside from having the same villains, but this one moves a lot different than the first film as well. The first one's slow and really drawn out and isolated, where this one is much more entertaining. It's more of like an 80s slasher, the feel of it, about this family who goes to a mobile trailer park and soon realizes that where is everybody? It kind of feels abandoned, and you find out that there's these 3 killers on the loose that are picking off all these people in this park. It got great style to it. I really enjoy all the characters, even though there's a lot of drama between them and they're kind of bickering. I understand the drama there because with the teens and the parents, and they're just at that point in life, so it doesn't make them unlikable characters that they're fighting or mad at each other. It's understandable. So I really enjoy them. I really enjoy the look of the killers. They're menacing. They're ambiguous. You don't know what they want, and they don't really want anything, I think, and that's the whole creepy part about it. Just a great throwback to 80s slashers with neon lights, synth pop soundtrack, which is really unique, and we get a badass pool scene with Sackhead, the Sackhead villain, going after someone in the pool, and it's shot so well. Definitely the standout scene in the franchise. I'll say there's only 2 movies so far, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It was a first time watch for me, but I will be returning to it. And we get a trilogy coming out of The Strangers real soon, so that'll be real interesting to check out. Hopefully, they can continue the trend of making good movies. At number 8, I got the new movie Totally Killer. This is an Amazon Prime original, I believe. And yeah, just a real fun movie. Takes the concept of Back to the Future and Happy Death Day or Scream, a slasher like that, kind of mixes the two together, where this girl time travels back to the 80s to try to stop this set of murders that happened at the time and kind of help out her mom because her mom was around at that time. And it's just real interesting. A lot of Easter eggs, a lot of references to Back to the Future and movies like that. It has that meta self-awareness, since they know horror movies exist in this film and slashers exist, and they try to follow certain rules. That's where like the scream elements kind of come in. But yeah, real fun. The killer had a really unique mask, and there's a twist and all that revolving him, and it's like a who done it. You're not sure who it is. So I think that was handled real well. The kills are pretty good. The humor really landed for me. There's a lot of jokes about how the 80s didn't really give a damn about, like, cancel culture or racial slurs and stuff. And it's just funny how this new generation girl from 2023 goes back and is kind of offended and shocked at the way the world worked back in the 80s. That's a whole lot of fun. It's definitely one worth checking out. It was an entertaining, just a thrill ride from start to finish. Up next at number 7, I got Child's Play 2, the sequel. A great follow-up to the original. We get more Chucky here. He's starting to come into his own with his one-liners and that, and being a little bit more self-aware of his existence as the doll. We get Andy back. People still aren't believing him. I feel like Alex Vincent, who plays Andy, I feel like he does a better job performing this time around. He matured a tiny bit in the year or 2 years since the first movie. And yeah, we just get more kills, more Chucky action. I like how he's like, "How's it hanging, Phil?" When he kills the foster dad and he has him hanging on the thing. There's a lot of iconic moments like that, where he buries the Tommy doll and Kyle ends up finding it and be like, "Oh shit, Chucky is alive." And Kyle is a great side character, one of my favorites in the franchise. Great addition. And this all leads up to one of the most badass final acts in the franchise at the Toy Factory, where Chucky keeps coming at them and keeps getting hurt and stapled and melted and gets his hand ripped off and replaces it with a dagger, which gives him a really cool look. And he just keeps coming back and back. And I just love it. It's a really thrilling final act. A great follow up to the original as well. Most people have this in first place in their Chucky ranking, and I see why. I enjoy it. I just enjoy a couple other Child's Play movies above it. Up next at number 6, speaking of Child's Play movies, is Child's Play the remake from 2019. Now, this is a very polarizing movie. It has a very love-hate relationship with the fans. Some fans despise this film, while others, like me, really enjoy it. I just appreciate it going in its own unique direction, using AI instead of voodoo. This is not a serial killer trapped in a doll. This is just a computer without its safety protocols. And, it's really something that's been told for decades now about AI and robots and how they're very dangerous, especially once they get so advanced. James Cameron has been telling us this for years in The Terminator. But yeah, I love it. I love his bond he has with Andy and how he thinks he's doing the right thing when like the cat scratches Andy. He's like, "Oh, we got to kill the cat." Like in his mind, he's doing the right thing. And I think that's just such a unique thing for Chucky. Maybe it would have worked better if they didn't call it Child's Play, because this doesn't feel like our average Chucky, our original Chucky. No way. I think he does a great job with the voice acting. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself. And that Buddy song is hella catchy and annoying at the same time. But yeah, he is unnerving. He does bring something new to the character, especially when at night he's in the dark corner. He's playing the sounds of the cat dying. He's playing over that voice recording. It's so damn creepy and unnerving. Andy should have been a couple years younger. I feel like they miscasted. They casted him way too old. Cool to see Aubrey Plaza as the mom here. We get a pretty thrilling final act at the toy store again. Much different than part 2 though. This one involves a crowd of people and multiple dolls all going crazy. It's just fun. It takes a modern twist with the Child's Play franchise, which I appreciate. It's not a copy and paste of the original, which remakes should start following. When you go off script and do something different with a remake, not everybody's going to like it, but I will appreciate it more than you copy and pasting it. And I always have a good time with Child's Play 2019. It's gory, it's brutal in its kills, but it also has great characters and great moments. Reaching our top 5, the heavy hitters, I got Psycho 2. Now, what an amazing follow-up to the 1960 classic Psycho. It takes it in a completely different direction, makes Anthony Perkins' character, Norman Bates, the good guy. You're actually sympathizing with this character. He's done his time. He's been rehabilitated. He's on medication, He is ready to be back into society, put back into society. But there's just a few people that don't want that to happen. And one of them is Marion Crane's sister, Lila, I think her name is, from the original film. That actress actually comes back into this one, and you find out that her and her daughter are planning to sabotage Norman to make him look like he is evil and should go back to the asylum, that he's not cured. And yeah, you just feel so bad for Norman because he's slowly slipping and slipping back into his old ways, and it's not his fault. He's being pushed into that character again. And it's just a great mystery there. You get this third person in the house that we never really know who it is. This third character that, does some brutal kills. And the mystery of that is really well done. And yeah, just a really unique direction to take this franchise. It got great cinematography by Dean Cundy as well. Great writing by Tom Holland. And yeah, just a great follow up that everybody should check out. It's one of the best horror sequels ever. My only little nitpick is the final scene with Mrs. Spool revealing that she's really Norman's real mom. And I'm like, I'm not really buying that. But it's still fine. Like, I don't hate it. It's just a little nitpick. But aside from that, this is a badass sequel to an iconic horror movie. Up next, at number 4, I got the original Child's Play. Funny, Tom Holland actually directed this film, and he written Psycho 2, which I just mentioned. Don Mancini he wrote all the Child's Play movies though, and that's I feel like why we had a little bit of consistency there anyway, concerning the timeline and the storyline. But this original film is not like the others. Chucky is not running around doing thousands of kills and one-liners and things like that. He's not that character yet. He's very subtle with his humor and his joke, not really jokes, but just his dialogue in general. But I like that. This movie's more building on the mystery of everybody surrounding Andy, thinking that, like, is this something wrong with this kid? He's claiming that his doll is alive and a serial killer from the past. And it's just a really well written story. I love the tension that they give us with the mom character and Chucky when she finally realizes no batteries in the doll. And this leads to her dropping the doll, rolling under the couch, and they get that slow peek under the couch. Very tension filled to the point where she's threatening to put him into the furnace, and he starts freaking out at her. Love that scene. Got a great final act. Again, with Chucky just keep coming back. They set him on fire. They shoot him a bunch of times. And, you know, he's being dismembered, and he just keeps coming. It's very thrilling, very engaging. Alex Vincent, you know, he stumbles his lines a few times in here, but I mean, he was a young kid. That's understandable. But yeah, I just love the mythology, the lore behind this, with all the voodoo and how you get to see Charles E. Ray go into the doll at the start. And this makes for a really unique, original, and interesting story, and easily the best killer doll movie I've ever seen. At number 3, we got the original, the classic, Psycho from 1960. Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece, even though he has a few of them. And yeah, this is the story in it is brilliant. So good. That's what keeps me coming back all the time is the story in this. We get this woman stealing money on the run. You know, that in itself could have been a movie that is so interesting, and you're curious to find out if she's going to get away with it or caught. This all leads to her going to Bates Motel, where it kind of flips and becomes this other movie, and she gets killed off in the shower 40 minutes in, and you're like, but she was her main lead. But it was a little bait and switch. And then they show us these other characters, and the whole investigation on Marion Crane is so unique. And of course, Norman Bates, being such a great character as well, comes off so innocent, and you feel bad for him hearing how abusive his mother can be, yelling in that from at the house. But yeah, the great twist and reveal that he is actually dressing up as his mother and doing all these kills is just mind blowing to me, especially for 1960. It's just so well done, well written. The camera angles and shots are out of this world for the time. It's just amazing. Got that great iconic score, which is still one of the best horror scores ever to this day. I mean, what else can I say about this movie that hasn't already been mentioned? I feel like the pacing is phenomenal for a 60s film, better than most 70s films even. It's just an all-around masterpiece at a 10 out of 10 all day. And yeah, it's great. Reaching my top 2, at number 2, I gave it to The Descent. I've been loving this movie since it came out. This is a modern masterpiece in my eyes. It's one of the best horror movies of the last 20 something years. It's so good. It's dripping with tension and claustrophobia and mystery. Right from the get-go, it's very sad that our main lead loses her husband and kid, you know, in an accident, and she feels like she has no reason to live, and she's trying to get back into society and get back to her social life. So like a year or so later, she goes on this expedition to go in these caves with her friends, all girl cast, which is really cool, kind of like how The Thing is an all guy cast. And both of those movies are very isolated, because this one takes place mostly all in this cave. And we learn to find out that this cave has never been explored before. They get trapped inside, and it's so claustrophobic. It's so skin crawling. Things just keep getting worse and worse. We get a lot of drama between our characters. They start bickering, and we find out, things from the past get dug up, and it just makes for a very entertaining and interesting watch. And then halfway through, they throw in these underground monsters that are killing them off, which didn't even have to be there to make this a horror movie. It was already horrific enough. But adding that on is just a cherry on top. And this is like this lost civilization that's been living in these caves that are, blind at this point and go off hearing. And there's pools of blood in this movie they have to swim through. And it's very disgusting and gross and full of bones and stuff. And it just makes you want to know more about this world and about these creatures. And our main lead is so likable and so easy to root for, especially after everything she's been through, to the point where she screws all over one of her own after finding out stuff about her, like her friend Juno, who's not much of a friend at all, who you find out was cheating on her late husband, cheating on our main girl's boyfriend at the time when he was living, and everything like that. And she's the one who led them into these caves that were never been explored and caused them to be in this situation. So she totally gets what she deserves when our main lead puts a pickaxe in her leg and leaves her there for dead. You're actually like rooting for that. Yes. And you gotta watch the UK or Canadian ending to this, the unrated ending. It's way better than that crappy theatrical US version they put out there, which, I never even really watched. I seen clips of it, but if I'm going to watch this, I'm watching the unrated every time. And that's what I watched the first time I watched this film. So good, it holds up, and it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies ever. But for me, coming in the first place, the best movie I watched this October was Carrie, the original from the 70s, Stephen King classic, the first Stephen King novel turned into movie, directed brilliantly by Brian De Palma. I think he really elevates this film as well, his style that he uses. What is there to say about this movie that hasn't already been said? Carrie being bullied, it has a great message about that, how you shouldn't pick on the quiet person. You shouldn't pick on anybody, actually. Oh man, I don't even know where to start with this. It's just so good in every category. From the performances with Sissy Spacek playing this bullied kid who, just wants to fit in the world. And as the movie's going on, she's starting to feel accepted. And you're actually like, oh, damn, I'm feeling good for Carrie. But you know what's going to happen in the end. You know the prank that is being set up to be pulled on her at prom. And it's just so unfortunate because you're really just wishing this character could live a happy life, especially when she's getting the dance and have all these friends at the prom, you think. Anyway, it's just so unfortunate what happens to her, but that's just great writing when you're rooting for a character like that. And Sissy Spacek just really pulled it off. Like, she is a beautiful girl, but in a way, she makes herself seem like this character is realistic, like it's grounded. It feels like she could have actually experienced this in high school. And if we're talking about performances, I also have to mention Piper Laurie, who played her mom, this like extremist in religion who blames Carrie for everything and said that she's part of the devil and she's evil, and it's all because that she slept with her boyfriend when she shouldn't have given herself up, and she thinks that's the reason why Carrie's like this and why she has these evil powers. And she is just insufferable. You hate this character, and that's exactly how she's supposed to be written. Up to the point where her battling Carrie at the very end is so sad because you're like, this is mother and daughter. Carrie does love her mother, and there might be some love there from the mother to daughter, but it's never really shown. But yeah, it's such an abusive relationship. But the way it wraps up with Carrie nailing her to the wall in the same way that that religious statue was is just brilliant. Something that wasn't in the book that was added in, and I think that was a great choice. Man, everything about this movie is just so good. From the final act when the blood actually gets poured on Carrie and she freaks out. It's like the actress becomes a different person with her eyes becoming big, and she really looks like she's possessed by the devil at that point. Get some great kills. Oh my god, when she flips the car outside on those two bullies, those two main ones, John Travolta being one of them, funny enough. It's just such great effects, a little great stunt work there with the car. I mean, this movie just hits home on so many bases. It's relatable. I think even up to this day, it will always be relatable because there will always be bullies in school and people who take things too far. And yeah, it's just a masterpiece, easily in my eyes. My top three are all 10 out of 10s here. Just so good. And yeah, Carrie, from the direction from Brian De Palma to the style to the execution, the kills, the effects, the performances, and I'll also add in the score is great as well. It was supposed to be done by the guy who did the score for the original Psycho, but he ended up passing before he got to do the score for this. So they paid tribute to him by doing a few of the violin cues in Psycho in here, and it actually works really well with this story as well. And there's not much else more to say about this brilliant film, except for the fact that it comes in the first place in my October watches. So there you have it, guys. There's my ranking of all 31 movies I watched in October, all mostly horror, maybe aside from one being a horror comedy more, or a parody of horror with Young Frankenstein. But I had a blast making this video. Maybe in Christmas time in December, maybe I'll do the same thing for that, since I watch a lot of Christmas movies that time of year. But we'll see how busy I am in that. I still got Creepshow 2 and the Paranormal Activity franchise to rank, coming up within this next week or so. I wanted to do that in October, but just didn't have a chance. It was way too busy. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your favorite October watches was from that you watched in October, and rank them in the comments section. I'd love to see it. Follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram. Those are always posted in the description of the video. Links to those. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.